What price would you pay for your child's survival? In the merciless winter of 1880, one desperate mother made the hardest walk of her life, down the dusty main street of Santa Fe, clutching her starving child, offering the only thing she had left to sell. $2 for the lot of it. Not worth more than one. Who'd want a Mexican's hair anyway? But then, a stranger appeared. A man who knew what it meant to be valued only for what could be taken from you. What happened next would challenge everything the frontier believed about worth, dignity, and who deserves mercy when the world has none to spare. Stay until the final chapter to discover how one act of unexpected kindness sparked a dangerous confrontation that would test a rancher's limits and reveal the true cost of human dignity on America's forgotten frontier. Before we continue this powerful story, I need you to do something important right now. Hit that subscribe button and notification bell. Why? Because here at The Black Rancher, we're uncovering the hidden stories of courage and dignity that shaped the American West, stories deliberately erased from the history books. These aren't just tales of the past, they're reminders of what compassion can accomplish in our darkest hours. If you believe in the power of human dignity, share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe now and join our community dedicated to preserving these forgotten chapters of American history. Welcome to The Black Rancher. Now, let's begin. Chapter 1. Santa Fe, New Mexico Territory, 1880. The winter had shown no mercy to the high desert. 3 months without rain had withered crops in the fields, dust devils dancing where corn should have stood tall. By December, even the hardiest souls felt the pinch of hunger. For the desperate, it was much worse. Isaiah Freeman adjusted his coat against the bitter wind as he led his horse through the crowded Santa Fe market. 6 years a free man, 4 years a landowner, he'd come to town for supplies his ranch couldn't provide. The Diamondback Ranch was small but thriving, a testament to backbreaking work and stubborn determination. "Morning, Mr. Freeman," called Samuel, the general store owner, one of the few white men who'd look him in the eye. "Got your order ready?" Isaiah nodded. "Appreciate it. Throw in some extra coffee if you can spare it. Been cold nights." As he counted coins from his leather purse, a commotion near the back of the market caught his attention. A small crowd had gathered, their voices a mixture of amusement and contempt. $2 for the lot, a man's voice rang out. "Not a penny more." "Please, senor," came a woman's reply, her voice breaking with desperation. "It's worth 5 at least, enough for food for a month." Isaiah shouldn't have looked. He had his own concerns, fences needing mending, cattle to move before the next storm. But something in that voice, the raw desperation barely contained, pulled his attention. He turned to see a young Mexican woman, no more than 25, standing with her back to the crowd. Her arms cradled a child painfully thin, no more than 3 years old. Before her stood Jeremiah Dawson, the local barber, holding a pair of scissors. $3 then, Dawson said, his voice dripping with false generosity. "And only because I'm feeling charitable today." The woman's shoulders slumped. Even from behind, Isaiah could see her resignation. Her hand trembled as she reached up and unpinned her thick black hair. It cascaded down her back, reaching past her waist, glossy despite its owner's obvious malnutrition. "Mama, no," the child whimpered, clutching at her mother's worn dress. "Silencio, Lucia," the woman whispered. "Es necesario." The crowd watched with casual cruelty. Some even laughed. Isaiah knew that look, had seen it on plantation overseers appraising human flesh. The memory sent anger coursing through him. Before he realized what he was doing, Isaiah was moving through the crowd. "That won't be necessary, Mum," he said, his voice cutting through the market noise. The crowd parted, surprised at his intervention. The woman turned, revealing a face hollowed by hunger but still striking, with deep brown eyes that held both fear and fierce determination. "This is not your business, Freeman," Dawson snapped, scissors still open. "The lady and I have an arrangement." Isaiah looked directly at the woman. "Ma'am, are you selling your hair because you need food?" She hesitated, pride warring with desperation. "My daughter has not eaten in 2 days," she finally said. her accented English precise but strained. "I have nothing else to sell." Isaiah reached into his pocket and pulled out $10, money he'd set aside for new fence posts. "Keep your hair," he said quietly, extending the bills toward her. "This should cover food for a while." Dawson stepped forward. "Now wait just a minute. This woman and I are finished discussing," Isaiah cut him off, his voice low, but carrying an edge that made the barber step back. The woman stared at the money, then at Isaiah, suspicion clouding her features. "Why would you do this? What do you want in return?" It was a fair question. In her experience, in both their experiences, nothing came without a price. "Nothing," Isaiah said simply. "Just feed your child." Her hand trembled as she reached for the money, then hesitated. "I do not take charity." Isaiah nodded, understanding pride when he saw it. "Then consider it a loan. You can work it off." "How?" she asked, still suspicious. Isaiah hadn't thought that far ahead. But looking at the child's thin face, he improvised. "I have a ranch, 10 miles south. There's always work needs doing." A murmur ran through the crowd. A black rancher offering work to a Mexican woman. Scandal upon scandal. "The Diamondback Ranch," Isaiah continued, ignoring the whispers. "Ask anyone the way. Come when you're ready." He placed the money in her reluctant hand. "What's your name, ma'am?" She straightened, holding her daughter closer. "Elena Mendoza. This is Lucia." Isaiah nodded. "Isaiah Freeman. The offer stands, Mrs. Mendoza. Until then, keep your hair and feed your daughter." As he turned to go, Jeremiah Dawson stepped into his path. "You're making a mistake, Freeman," he hissed. "That woman's husband was Miguel Mendoza, killed in a gambling dispute last year. She's nothing but trouble, and that child is just another mouth this territory can't afford." Isaiah looked past him to where Elena was already purchasing bread from a vendor, her daughter's eyes wide with disbelief. "Seems to me," Isaiah said quietly, "this territory can't afford to lose any more of its humanity." He stepped around Dawson and headed back to his supplies. What Isaiah couldn't see was William Blackwood, local businessman and land speculator, watching the entire exchange from the shadows of his office above the market. His cold eyes narrowed as he made a note in his leather-bound book. "Freeman," he muttered, "always making things difficult." As Isaiah loaded his supplies, he couldn't shake the image of Elena's face, the mix of desperation, pride, and fierce love for her child. He didn't expect to see her again. Pride would likely keep her away. But 3 days later, as dawn broke over the Diamondback Ranch, a small figure appeared on the horizon, a child's hand clutched in hers, walking toward an uncertain welcome, but with her head held high, her long hair blowing in the winter wind. The early morning frost crunched under Elena's worn boots as she approached the ranch house. Lucia trudged beside her, occasionally stumbling on the uneven ground. They had walked for hours, starting before dawn, following directions from a reluctant shopkeeper in Santa Fe. "The black rancher? Freeman?" the man had scoffed. 10 miles south, though what business a decent woman has out there?" He'd let the implication hang in the air. Now, standing before the modest but well-maintained ranch house, Elena questioned her decision. The $10 had bought food enough for a week, but pride demanded she honor her word. She would work to repay the debt. Before she could knock, the door swung open. Isaiah stood there, surprise evident on his face. "Mrs. Mendoza," he said, recovering quickly. "Wasn't sure you'd come." "I pay my debts," Elena replied simply, her chin lifting slightly. Lucia half hid behind her mother's skirts, eyes wide at the tall man before them. Isaiah nodded, respect flickering in his eyes. "Come inside. It's cold enough to freeze a rattlesnake out here." The interior of the ranch house was modest but comfortable. A fire crackled in the stone fireplace, and the smell of coffee filled the air. To Elena's surprise, the place was clean and organized, not what she expected from a bachelor's home. "Coffee?" Isaiah offered, gesturing to the pot on the iron stove. Elena nodded, grateful for the warmth. As Isaiah poured 2 cups, Lucia's stomach growled audibly. The child looked mortified, burying her face deeper in her mother's skirts. Without comment, Isaiah set out a plate with cornbread and ham. "Breakfast," he said simply, placing it on the table. "Both of you should eat before we discuss work." Elena hesitated, pride warring with hunger. "We ate before coming," she lied. Isaiah's expression didn't change. "Then consider it hospitality. It's impolite to refuse." It was a kindness, allowing her dignity while addressing their need. Elena relented, settling Lucia at the table. The child ate slowly at first, then with increasing urgency as her hunger overcame her shyness. "You have a fine ranch," Elena said, sipping her coffee, trying to maintain some formality. Isaiah nodded. 160 acres, not large, but it's mine. Bought it 4 years ago through the Homestead Act. "It is difficult," Elena observed, "for someone like you to acquire land." Isaiah's eyes met hers, understanding the unspoken question. "Nearly impossible," he agreed. "Took 3 tries before the land office would even process my application. Then the banker lost my paperwork twice, but I was persistent." A small smile crossed his face. "Some might say stubborn." Elena nodded, understanding all too well. After her husband's death, she'd tried to keep their small farm, only to have the mortgage mysteriously double. When she'd protested, the bank had claimed her husband's signature on documents she knew he'd never seen. "I understand persistence," she said quietly. Isaiah studied her for a moment. "I imagine you do." He rose from the table. "About that work, I need help around the house, cooking, cleaning, mending. Ranch hands will be arriving next month for the spring drive, and preparation is needed." He named a fair wage, more than fair, in fact. "And the child?" Elena asked. "Lucia can stay here while you work. There's a room in the back, small, but it has 2 beds. You'll have privacy." Elena's eyes narrowed. She had encountered too many generous offers from men since Miguel's death. "I am not looking for that kind of arrangement, Mr. Freeman," she said stiffly. Isaiah's expression remained neutral. "Neither am I, Mrs. Mendoza. The offer is for work, nothing more. Your reputation remains your own." After a moment, Elena nodded. "Then I accept. When shall I start?" "You already have," Isaiah said, gesturing to their breakfast dishes. "When you're finished, I'll show you around." As they toured the property, Elena was impressed despite herself. The barn was well built, housing 4 horses and storage for hay and equipment. A small herd of cattle grazed in the distance. Everything spoke of careful planning and hard work. "You've done this alone?" she asked as they returned to the house. "Mostly. Hire hands for the bigger jobs." Isaiah paused. "People talk. Having you here will cause gossip." Elena lifted her chin. "I am accustomed to gossip, Mr. Freeman." "Isaiah," he corrected, "if we're working together." "Isaiah," she acknowledged. "And I am Elena." As she settled into the back room with Lucia, arranging their few belongings, Elena wondered what Miguel would think of their situation. Working for a black rancher would raise eyebrows in any community, but especially here, where racial hierarchies were rigidly enforced. But Miguel was dead, leaving nothing but debts and hungry mouths. Pride was a luxury she could no longer afford. Dignity, however, that she would never surrender. Meanwhile, in Santa Fe, William Blackwood sat in his opulent office listening to Jeremiah Dawson's report. "You're certain?" Blackwood asked, leaning forward. "The Mexican woman and her child are staying at Freeman's ranch?" Dawson nodded eagerly. "Moved in yesterday. Town's already buzzing with talk." Blackwood smiled coldly. "Interesting. Freeman's land adjoins that southern parcel I've been trying to acquire. This situation might provide the leverage I need." "How so?" "People tolerate Freeman's presence because he keeps to himself, but bringing a Mexican woman into his home, that crosses a line." Blackwood tapped his fingers thoughtfully on the desk. "Moral outrage can be quite useful when properly directed." "What do you want me to do?" Dawson asked. "Nothing yet. Let the scandal simmer." Blackwood reached for his ledger. "But keep me informed of any developments." As Dawson left, Blackwood studied the property map on his wall. The Diamondback Ranch sat on a prime location. controlling water access to 3 surrounding properties, including land Blackwood had recently acquired. "Soon, Freeman," he murmured. "Everyone has a weakness. I believe I've just found yours." Back at the ranch, as evening fell, Isaiah sat on his porch, watching Lucia chase fireflies in the yard while Elena prepared dinner. The child's laughter, likely the first in many weeks, filled the cooling air. It was a sound he'd never expected to hear on his property, a complication he hadn't planned for. But watching the little girl's delight in something as simple as fireflies, Isaiah couldn't bring himself to regret his impulsive decision in the market. What he didn't know was how high the price for that moment of compassion would eventually climb, or who would be asked to pay it. Weeks passed, and an unexpected rhythm developed at the Diamondback Ranch. Elena proved herself not just capable but invaluable, cooking meals that made the simple ingredients stretch, mending clothes with an expertise that extended their life, and keeping the ranch house in better order than Isaiah had managed alone. Lucia blossomed under the stability, her thin frame filled out, and her shy smiles became more frequent. She took to following Isaiah around the property, peppering him with questions in a charming mix of English and Spanish. "Por qué the cows have those marks on them?" she asked one morning, watching Isaiah check a new calf. "That's a brand," he explained patiently, showing her the Diamondback rattlesnake design. "It tells everyone these cattle belong to this ranch." "Like my name belongs to me," Lucia reasoned. Isaiah smiled. "Exactly like that." Elena, watching from the porch, felt something unfamiliar stir in her chest, something dangerously close to contentment. She quickly suppressed it. Their arrangement was temporary, she reminded herself, a business transaction. But as February turned to March, the lines began to blur. Isaiah taught Lucia to ride on a gentle mare. Elena expanded the kitchen garden, planting herbs she promised would transform Isaiah's basic meals. They fell into domestic patterns neither had expected. News of their arrangement spread quickly. Ranch hands from neighboring properties stopped visiting. The general store owner grew cold when Isaiah came to town. After church one Sunday, Elena overheard whispers that made her cheeks burn with anger. Living in sin with a black man. What example for that poor child. Never thought a Mexican woman would stoop so low. Elena had confronted Isaiah that evening. Perhaps this arrangement was a mistake. Isaiah had simply looked at her across the dinner table. "Do you have somewhere better to go?" The blunt question had silenced her. They both knew the answer. "People will always talk," Isaiah had said quietly. "Question is whether their talk is worth more than your daughter's full belly and safe bed." It wasn't. So they continued, an unusual family of circumstance rather than choice, bound by mutual need and growing respect, until the letter arrived. It came with the monthly mail delivery, official-looking, bearing the bank's seal. Isaiah read it on the porch, his expression darkening with each line. Elena, hanging laundry nearby, noticed the change immediately. "Bad news?" she asked cautiously. Isaiah folded the paper slowly. "Bank's calling in my loan, demanding full payment within 30 days. Elena's hands stilled on the wet sheet. "Can you pay it?" "Not without selling half my cattle, and even then—" He shook his head. "This is Blackwood's doing." William Blackwood. The name sent a chill through Elena. Her husband had owed the man money, gambling debts Miguel had sworn were forgiven. After his death, Blackwood had appeared at their farm, ledger in hand, demanding payment. When she couldn't pay, he'd offered an arrangement that had sent her fleeing in the night with Lucia. "Why would he target you?" she asked, though she feared she knew the answer. Isaiah's eyes met hers. "He's been trying to buy this land for 2 years, controls most of the water rights around here already. My creek is the only independent source for miles." Elena twisted the wet fabric between her hands. "It's because of us. The gossip about a black man taking in a Mexican woman and child." Her voice trailed off. "This isn't your fault," Isaiah said firmly. Blackwood would have found another excuse. But they both knew their unusual household had provided perfect ammunition. That evening, after Lucia was asleep, Elena approached Isaiah as he sat reviewing his finances at the kitchen table. "I should leave," she said quietly. Take Lucia back to town. It would help quiet the gossip. Isaiah looked up, his face illuminated by lamplight. And then what? Back to selling your hair for bread? Elena flinched at the bluntness, but couldn't deny the truth of it. There must be another way, she insisted. Perhaps if you spoke to the bank manager directly. Isaiah's laugh held no humor. Charles Prescott, the man won't even look me in the eye when I make my deposits, and Blackwood owns half his mortgage. Eleanor sat across from him. Then what will you do? Isaiah pushed aside the papers. Fight. I didn't survive slavery and war to lose this land to a man like Blackwood. The determination in his voice stirred something in Elena, a reminder of the fierce pride Miguel had once shown. Before the drinking, before the gambling, before he'd started raising his hand to her in drunken rages. What can I do? She asked simply. Isaiah studied her for a long moment. Stay, he finally said. Whatever happens having you and Lucia here, it reminds me what I'm fighting for. The next morning, Isaiah rode into town to meet with what few allies he had left. Elena, watching him go, made a decision of her own. William Blackwood's office sat above the bank, accessible by a side staircase that Elena climbed with determined steps. Lucia she had left with the rancher's wife next door, a kind woman who had defied her husband's disapproval to maintain friendly relations. Blackwood's secretary tried to stop her, but Elena pushed past, entering the inner office without knocking. Blackwood looked up, surprise quickly replaced by a calculating smile. Mrs. Mendoza, what an unexpected pleasure. Elena remained standing, her hands clasped tightly before her. You're trying to take Mr. Freeman's ranch. Blackwood leaned back, unperturbed by her directness. Business, my dear. Nothing personal. It became personal when you used my presence there as leverage. Ah. Blackwood steepled his fingers. So you've come to offer a trade. How predictable. Elena kept her expression neutral despite the insult. What do you want, Mr. Blackwood? What would make you withdraw your demand for immediate payment? Blackwood studied her for a long moment, then opened a drawer and withdrew a document. As it happens, Freeman owes considerably less than your late husband did. He pushed the paper across the desk. Miguel's markers, quite substantial. Eleanor didn't touch the document. My husband's debts died with him. Not in this territory. Blackwood's smile never reached his eyes. As his widow, they fall to you, unless of course someone were to forgive them. The trap was sprung, just as he'd planned. Elena felt cold dread spreading through her. What are you suggesting? She asked, though she already knew. Blackwood rose, circling the desk. Leave Freeman's ranch. Come work for me instead. I have a position that would suit your particular talents. His eyes traveled over her in a way that made her skin crawl. In exchange, I'll extend Freeman's loan terms and forgive your husband's debts entirely. Elena's hand itched to slap him, but she controlled herself. And if I refuse, then I'll take Freeman's ranch, and afterward, I'll have the sheriff collect your husband's debt. His voice hardened. One way or another, Mrs. Mendoza, you will pay what you owe. Elena stood perfectly still, weighing impossible choices. I need time to consider. You have until tomorrow, Blackwood said, returning to his chair. Choose wisely. As Elena descended the stairs, her mind raced. Blackwood had outmaneuvered her, using Miguel's debts as she should have anticipated. Now she faced an impossible choice. Sacrifice herself to save Isaiah's ranch and secure Lucia's future, or refuse and watch them all lose everything. What she didn't know was that Isaiah had seen her enter Blackwood's office. He stood across the street, watching her emerge, her face pale but composed. And in that moment, he understood exactly what she intended to do. The mercy line had been drawn. The question now was who would step across it, and what they would sacrifice when they did. Before we continue to the most powerful part of this story, I need to remind you why these stories matter. At The Black Rancher, we're not just telling tales, we're reclaiming history that was deliberately erased. The courage of black cowboys and ranchers helped build America, yet their stories were systematically removed from our history books. If you believe these stories deserve to be told, please hit that subscribe button now and share this video with someone who appreciates powerful narratives about dignity, courage, and the true meaning of humanity. Your support allows us to continue bringing these forgotten chapters of American history back to life. Now let's continue with Chapter 4, where everything Elena and Isaiah have built is about to be challenged in ways they never imagined. Elena returned to the ranch at dusk, her mind still reeling from Blackwood's ultimatum. She found Isaiah waiting on the porch, his expression unreadable in the fading light. "You went to see Blackwood," he said, not a question. Elena nodded, too exhausted for pretense. "How did you know?" "Saw you go up the stairs to his office." Isaiah's voice remained neutral. "What did he offer?" Elena looked away. "It doesn't matter." "It matters to me." Isaiah stepped closer. "This is my fight, Elena, not yours." Something snapped inside her, the strain of weeks of uncertainty, of years of struggling alone. "It became my fight the moment you said, 'Keep your hair in that marketplace.'" Her voice rose despite herself. "It became my fight when you gave Lucia a safe place to sleep and food to eat." Isaiah remained calm before her outburst. "What did Blackwood want?" Elena's shoulders slumped. "He has Miguel's gambling debts, says they transfer to me as his widow." She met Isaiah's eyes directly. "He offered to forgive them and extend your loan if I work for him instead." Understanding darkened Isaiah's face. "That's not work he's offering." "No," Elena agreed quietly. "It's not." Silence stretched between them, broken only by the distant lowing of cattle. "You're not going," Isaiah finally said, his voice leaving no room for argument. Elena straightened. "It's not your decision to make." "Elena," Isaiah's voice softened, "there are some prices too high to pay, even for survival. And what happens to Lucia if we lose everything? If I'm imprisoned for debts I cannot pay?" Her voice cracked slightly. "What choice do I have?" Isaiah's expression changed, determination replacing concern. "There's always a choice." He gestured toward the house. "Come inside. We need to talk." In the kitchen, while Lucia slept peacefully in the back room, Isaiah spread a map across the table. "My land," he said, tracing the boundaries. 160 acres. The creek runs here, providing water, even in drought years. His finger moved to adjacent properties. "Blackwood owns these 3 parcels. But what he doesn't know is that I've been studying territorial water rights laws." Elena leaned forward, confused. "What does this mean?" "It means," Isaiah said with the first smile she'd seen all day, "that Blackwood doesn't understand the land he's trying to steal." He explained his discovery. An old Spanish land grant documented that the creek originated on what was now the Diamondback Ranch. Under territorial law, this gave the property owner first rights to the water, rights that would transfer with the deed. "If Blackwood forces me out," Isaiah concluded, "he'll control the water. But if I sell voluntarily to someone else—" "You could ensure he never gets those rights," Elena finished, understanding dawning. Isaiah nodded. "Exactly, and I know just who to sell to." The next morning, they rode into Santa Fe together. Their destination wasn't the bank or Blackwood's office, but the Territorial Land Office. There Isaiah met with Thomas Jenkins, a former Union officer who had helped him secure his original claim. "It's a risk," Jenkins warned after hearing their plan. "Blackwood has considerable influence." "But is it legal?" Isaiah pressed. Jenkins nodded reluctantly. "If the documents are in order, yes. The sale would be binding." While Isaiah and Jenkins reviewed paperwork, Elena waited outside, anxiety gnawing at her. Through the window, she saw Isaiah sign several documents. Then, to her surprise, Jenkins handed her a pen. "Mrs. Mendoza," Isaiah called, "your signature is needed." Confused, Elena entered the office. "Why would you need my signature?" Isaiah exchanged a look with Jenkins before answering. "Because I'm selling half the ranch to you." Elena stared at him in disbelief. "What?" 50-50 partnership, Isaiah explained calmly, as if proposing nothing more unusual than a cattle purchase. "You'll own the half with the creek and water rights." "This is madness," Elena breathed. "I have no money to buy land." "The payment terms are flexible," Jenkins interjected diplomatically. "Mr. Freeman has set the price at $1, with the remainder to be paid through labor and improvements to the property. Elena looked between the men, suspicion rising. "Why would you do this? I am nobody to you." Isaiah's expression grew serious. "You're not nobody, Elena. You're a woman who was willing to sell her hair to feed her child, who works harder than anyone I've known, who was prepared to sacrifice herself to save my ranch." He pushed the document toward her. "I'd say that makes you exactly the kind of partner I need." Elena's hand trembled as she took the pen. "Blackwood will be furious." "Yes," Isaiah agreed with the ghost of a smile. "He will." That afternoon they waited together in Blackwood's outer office, the deed transfer document secure in Isaiah's coat pocket. When finally admitted, Blackwood's confident smile faltered at the sight of them together. "Freeman," he acknowledged coldly, "I believe my business was with Mrs. Mendoza alone." "Actually," Isaiah replied, "your business is now with both of us." He placed the documents on the desk. "The Diamondback Ranch has new ownership structure. Mrs. Mendoza now owns half the property, specifically the half containing the creek and water rights." Blackwood snatched up the papers, his face darkening as he read. "This is preposterous. She has no means to purchase land." "The Territorial Land Office disagrees," Isaiah said calmly. "The transfer is legal and binding." Blackwood slammed the papers down. "You think this changes anything? I'll still call in your loan. You'll still lose everything." "Perhaps," Isaiah conceded, "but not to you. Because if you force a sale, Mrs. Mendoza retains first right of refusal on my half, and the water rights stay with her portion regardless." The implications sank in slowly. Blackwood's carefully orchestrated plan to control the region's water was crumbling before him. "Furthermore," Elena added, finding her voice, "we filed a formal complaint regarding your attempt to collect my husband's gambling debts. The territorial marshal was quite interested to learn about your creative lending practices." Blackwood's face contorted with rage. "You'll regret this, both of you." Isaiah stood, offering his arm to Elena in a gesture that spoke volumes. "I believe we're finished here, Mrs. Mendoza." As they left the office, Elena felt a strange lightness. For the first time since Miguel's death, perhaps longer, she walked not as a victim, but as a woman of substance, a landowner, a partner. On the ride home, as the sun began its descent toward the western mesas, Isaiah broke the comfortable silence. "You know this changes things between us." Elena nodded. "People will talk even more now." "Let them," Isaiah said simply. "We know the truth of it." The truth, such a simple word for something so complex. Their arrangement had begun as a transaction, dignity purchased for $10 in a marketplace. It had evolved into something neither had anticipated: mutual respect, partnership, and perhaps something deeper that neither was ready to name. As the Diamondback Ranch came into view, Lucia ran from the porch where the neighbor had been watching her, her face alight with joy at their return. "Mama, Isaiah," she called, waving wildly. Eleanor felt Isaiah's eyes on her. "What will you tell her?" he asked quietly. Eleanor watched her daughter running toward them, her hair flying behind her, hair she still possessed because a stranger had once said, "Keep it." "I will tell her," Eleanor replied softly, "that this is home now, for both of us." It wasn't everything. There would be struggles ahead, prejudice to face, a ranch to maintain, a partnership to define. But for now, it was enough. As they dismounted to embrace Lucia, the setting sun cast long shadows across land that now belonged to both of them. A black rancher and a Mexican widow who had found against all odds that dignity wasn't something that could be bought or sold. It was something you claimed for yourself, one choice at a time. 3 months later, spring had transformed the Diamondback Ranch. The creek ran full with snowmelt from distant mountains, the pastures grew lush with new grass, and the cattle grew fat on nature's bounty. But the most remarkable transformation wasn't on the land. It was in the people who worked it. Elena stood on the porch, watching Isaiah teach Lucia how to rope a practice dummy. The child's laughter carried on the breeze as her small loop missed its target for the dozenth time. "You're getting closer," Isaiah encouraged. his patience seemingly endless. "Remember, it's all in the wrist." Elena smiled, remembering how Miguel had lacked such patience. He would have bellowed in frustration, sending Lucia running in tears. But Isaiah simply reset the dummy and demonstrated again, his large hands guiding Lucia's smaller ones. Inside the ranch house, evidence of their unusual partnership was everywhere. Eleanor's embroidered curtains hung in windows once bare. Isaiah's books shared shelf space with Lucia's growing collection of treasures, interesting stones, feathers, a tiny bird's nest abandoned by its builder. In town, attitudes had begun to shift, albeit slowly. Blackwood's influence had waned after the territorial marshal's investigation uncovered widespread predatory lending practices. Several families, emboldened by Elena and Isaiah's stand, had come forward with their own complaints. The general store owner had cautiously resumed friendly relations, especially after Elena began supplying him with surplus vegetables from her expanded garden. Even the church community had softened somewhat, though certain parishioners still changed pews if Elena and Lucia sat too close. Isaiah rarely attended services, preferring to commune with his God in the quiet of the ranch. "Too many people worshipping a white Jesus while ignoring his teachings," he'd explained when Elena asked. Their partnership remained the subject of speculation. Some whispered that it was merely a business arrangement. Others, more salaciously, suggested it was something else entirely. Neither Isaiah nor Elena bothered to correct them. The truth of their relationship was theirs alone to define, and it was evolving. Glances held a moment longer than necessary. Hands occasionally brushed while passing tools or dishes. Conversations stretched late into the evening after Lucia was asleep. Nothing was spoken, nothing acknowledged, yet both felt the subtle shift. On this particular afternoon, as Elena watched Isaiah and Lucia, a cloud of dust on the horizon announced visitors. Her hand instinctively went to the small revolver Isaiah had insisted she learn to use after Blackwood's threats. But as the riders drew closer, Elena relaxed. It was Thomas Jenkins from the land office, accompanied by a woman Elena didn't recognize. "Mrs. Mendoza," Jenkins called, dismounting. "Is Freeman about?" Elena gestured toward the corral. "Teaching Lucia to rope. Please come inside where it's cooler. I'll bring refreshments." In the kitchen, while Jenkins and his companions settled at the table, Elena prepared coffee and sliced fresh bread. Through the window, she saw Isaiah approaching with Lucia perched on his shoulders. "Mr. Jenkins," Isaiah greeted, ducking to allow Lucia to slide down safely. "Unexpected pleasure, and Miss Rebecca Whitman," the woman introduced herself, extending a gloved hand that Isaiah shook with only slight hesitation. "I'm a reporter with the Santa Fe Gazette." Isaiah's expression turned wary. "What brings a newspaper reporter to the Diamondback?" Jenkins cleared his throat. "Miss Whitman is writing a series on successful homesteading in the territory. I suggested your ranch as an example." Elena and Isaiah exchanged glances. A newspaper story about their unusual arrangement could bring unwelcome attention. "It's quite remarkable," Miss Whitman continued, oblivious to their concern. "A successfully run ranch with diverse ownership, profitable in just a few years." She opened her notebook. "Mr. Jenkins tells me you've even expanded operations recently." Isaiah nodded cautiously. "Bought 20 head of Hereford cattle last month. Better breeding stock." "And you, Mrs. Mendoza," Miss Whitman turned to Elena. "How did you come to be co-owner of this enterprise? It's most unusual for a woman, especially a Mexican woman," Elena finished with a slight edge. Miss Whitman had the grace to look embarrassed. "I meant no offense. It's simply unusual in these parts." Isaiah stepped in smoothly. "Mrs. Mendoza brings valuable expertise to our partnership. The ranch has prospered under our joint management." "Indeed," Jenkins added, "their water management system has become something of a model. Several neighboring ranches have adopted similar approaches." The conversation continued, with Miss Whitman asking detailed questions about ranch operations, careful to avoid the more personal aspects of their arrangement. Elena answered confidently about her contributions: the expanded garden that now produced surplus for market, her management of the ranch accounts, the preservation techniques that kept them fed through winter. Only when Lucia, bored with adult conversation, wandered outside did Miss Whitman broach the subject they'd all been avoiding. "People talk, of course," she said quietly, "about the nature of your partnership." Isaiah's jaw tightened, but Elena spoke first. "People always talk, Miss Whitman, especially when women and men of different races find ways to cooperate rather than conflict." Her voice remained calm. "What matters is not what people say, but what we build together." Miss Whitman studied her for a moment, then made a note. "Would you say then that your arrangement is strictly business?" The question hung in the air. Elena felt Isaiah's eyes on her, but didn't look at him. "I would say," Elena replied carefully, "that our arrangement is exactly what we choose it to be. No more, no less." Miss Whitman seemed ready to press further, but Jenkins interjected. "I think that's quite enough for your article, Rebecca. Remember, the focus is successful homesteading, not personal matters." After the visitors departed, promising to send a copy of the article when published, Elena and Isaiah stood together on the porch, watching the dust trail disappear. "A newspaper story," Isaiah mused. "Not what I expected when I offered you $10 in the marketplace." Elena smiled. "Nor what I expected when I considered selling my hair for bread." "Do you regret it?" Isaiah asked suddenly. "Any of it?" Elena turned to face him fully. "Regret having a home for Lucia, food on our table, land in my name?" She shook her head. "No, I regret nothing." "People will read that article," Isaiah warned. "The talk will start again." "Let them talk," Elena said, echoing his words from months before. "We know the truth of it." But what was that truth? Partnership born of desperation had evolved into something neither had anticipated. Respect had deepened into affection. Cooperation into companionship. Yet neither had spoken the words that might define what lay between them. That evening, after Lucia was asleep, they sat together on the porch as they often did, watching stars appear in the vast New Mexico sky. The comfortable silence between them felt different somehow, charged with unspoken possibilities. "I've been thinking," Isaiah said finally, "about what Miss Whitman asked about our arrangement." Elena tensed slightly. "What about it? It began as a transaction. $10 to keep your hair, work to repay the debt." Elena nodded, uncertain where he was heading. "But the debt was paid long ago," Isaiah continued, "and still you remain." "Do you wish me to leave?" Elena asked, her voice carefully neutral. Isaiah turned to face her, his expression serious in the fading light. "No. That's what I'm trying to say, Elena. I don't want you to leave. Ever." The implications of his words hung between them. "People would never accept it," Elena said softly. "A black man and a Mexican woman." "I'm not asking what people would accept," Isaiah replied. "I'm asking what you would accept." Elena looked away, toward the distant mountains silhouetted against the darkening sky. "When Miguel died, I swore I would never again be dependent on a man's charity or goodwill." "This isn't charity," Isaiah said firmly, "and it isn't goodwill. It's—" He paused, searching for the right words. "It's recognition of your strength, your dignity, your worth." Elena felt tears threatening and blinked them away. No man had ever spoken to her of worth beyond her usefulness. "I don't know what this is between us," Isaiah continued when she didn't respond. "I don't have words for it, but I know it's something I'm not willing to lose." Elena finally met his gaze. "Nor am I," she admitted softly. "It wasn't a declaration of love. Not yet. It was something more fundamental, acknowledgement of a bond formed through shared struggle and mutual respect. A foundation stronger than passion, more enduring than convention." "So we continue," Isaiah said simply, "day by day, building something together." Elena nodded. Day by day. As if to seal their unspoken agreement, Isaiah slowly, deliberately, reached across the space between them and took her hand in his. Elena's fingers curled around his, neither pulling away nor demanding more. In the distance, a coyote called to the rising moon, its cry echoing across land that had witnessed countless human dramas, land that had once been wilderness, then Spanish territory, then Mexican, now American. Land that had seen blood spilled and peace made, prejudice wielded and overcome. Land that was now theirs together. Inside the house, Lucia slept peacefully, unaware of the momentous conversation taking place outside her window. She had adjusted to ranch life with a child's resilience, accepting Isaiah's presence as naturally as the sun rising each morning. To her, their unusual family wasn't strange at all. It simply was. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The newspaper article would eventually appear, forcing them to weather fresh gossip and perhaps outright hostility. The ranch would demand constant attention. Their evolving relationship would require careful navigation in a society determined to keep them apart. But tonight, sitting hand in hand beneath a canopy of stars, Elena and Isaiah had claimed something precious: the right to define themselves, to choose their own path, to build a life on their own terms. It had begun with a desperate bargain: hair for bread. It had transformed into something neither could have imagined: dignity reclaimed, partnership forged, possibilities opened. And it had happened because one man had looked beyond a woman's desperation to see her worth, and one woman had found the courage to accept respect when it was offered without strings. "Keep it," he had said of her hair. "I'll feed you both," he had promised. Simple words that had changed everything. What you've just witnessed is more than a story. It's a reclaiming of our shared American history. The black cowboys, ranchers, and pioneers who helped build this nation have been systematically erased from our history books, their courage and dignity forgotten. Here at the Black Rancher, we are committed to bringing these stories back to life, stories of resilience, humanity, and dignity against impossible odds. These aren't just tales of the past, they're reminders of what we can achieve when we see beyond the artificial boundaries that divide us. If this story touched you, please hit that subscribe button now. Share this video with someone who appreciates powerful narratives about our shared humanity. Your support allows us to continue uncovering these forgotten chapters of American history. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Until next time, remember, dignity isn't something that can be bought or sold. It's something you claim for yourself, one choice at a time.